welcome to today's episode. Today we've got a super exciting guest, Jordan Levy. So Jordan is an education technology entrepreneur and founder of Capsource. Jordan's passionate about helping students bridge the gap between education and the workforce by connecting them with real companies, real projects, and real mentors. Through Capsource, he's helped over 18,000 students collaborate with major brands like Caterpillar, DoorDash, and Adidas, preparing the next generation to graduate truly workforce ready. Jordan's journey started while still in college, when he founded and later sold his first EdTech company, Real Time Cases. Now, outside of work, he's a lover of travel, cooking, and connecting with fellow entrepreneurs. So Jordan, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah, 100%. And for those of you just joining the podcast, we at Strativa AI help businesses scale their revenue over 12 months using AI. So if you want to learn how to take your business to the next level, make sure to stick around for future episodes. And if you're interested in a free growth consultation, just drop the word growth into the DMs. So Jordan, can you tell us more about your background and how you got to where you're at with Capsource?
Yeah. So it's been about 10 years since I started Capsource, and
Nice.
we work with schools all over the world. Really, there's no barriers that prohibit experiential learning, just like business, right? At the end of the day, you can have teams in the Middle East and India and Asia, and you can have customers in all over, North and South America, and connecting these folks through collaboration is very natural,
Yeah,
especially in the post-COVID world. I mean, I
right.
started Capsource pre-COVID, and it was all about, a lot of schools were really focused on trying to figure out local regional connections.
Mm-hmm.
And really, once the kind of flow of collaboration remotely started really taking off, I think people got pretty excited about the possibility of working across, time zones and cultures, and really developing that kind of competency for students.
Yeah.
So it kind of unleashes for us a lot more opportunity, because at the end of the day, some schools are in places that just make it very hard to build relationships for them in their local environment. A lot of what we do is helping students develop their career by either validating or disvalidating that they're heading in the right direction from a career standpoint. So whether that's giving a marketing student a social media marketing job, and then they figure out, actually, I want to do marketing analytics, and like actually helping them find that next marketing analytics job, that marketing analytics opportunity in another organization, that's really the work that we're doing, and trying as much as possible to embed it into classes. So you don't have to wait until co-curricular or your summers for internships, but really it's literally all throughout your academic program.
And so what does that look like for the students? Like how do you get embedded in their classes or into their schools?
Yeah, the cool thing is about experiential learning. We call it project-based experiential learning. It's one of
Okay.
three approaches that we use at Capsource. We do projects, case studies, which are asynchronous, meaning students can work on projects not directly with the company, but there's enough information for them to get a good taste, and then mentorship, which is one-on-one professional development. So most of the time, we start with institutions using the project-based learning. It's the most used and valuable of the experiential learning modules that we offer. There's so much variety that we see schools use. There's the most classic example is a 12, 13 week, one semester capstone. Students have a full semester to work on a project with their classmates, and then deliver on that result for a real industry organization. Then we see some schools say, actually, let's see what happens if we give them 2 semesters to work on that project. What can they tackle in that amount of time? And then I actually have seen some programs that have been as short as 1 week. One of my favorite programs I've ever worked on was at the University of Notre Dame.
Okay.
They have a program called Interterm for their graduate business students. They got to do 1 week on-site experiences with industry leaders, a full 40-hour work week, where they actually got to drive consulting level outcomes directly to, these real industry organizations and business leaders. So it's just amazing. You think, is a week enough time? I mean, yeah, the proof is in the pudding. The
Could
amount of
be.
value that some of these companies got out of just 1 week of time, where the students are just crunching numbers, they're feeling the energy, they're in the office, they're working directly with these senior leaders, versus, if you do a 13-week remote meeting once a week, it's amazing, the differences in kind of what you can accomplish. And and ultimately the outcomes that are driven. But regardless, it's all good for the students, whether you're
Yeah.
doing week, 5 week, or a full semester or a full year.
Okay, and so Capsource's clients, the companies like Caterpillar that we mentioned at the beginning, or is it the universities and then kind of the users are the students? What are those relationships like?
Yeah, so our primary customer is the academic institution. It's kind of
Okay,
like B2B to C. So we're selling to schools. Schools are ultimately using this as programming for students. It's
got
a
it.
software platform and services to set up these types of programs. So we're kind of an academic program builder, facilitator, manager. In addition to that, we have some clients in the industry side of our platforms. Ideally, as the marketplace gets bigger, there's more and more value for the industry organizations, and there is ability for them to invest. For example, we do these premier virtual internship programs for companies. They can invest into finding talent and building experiences for students to work with them. We have case competitions where they're sponsoring this program to ultimately work with anywhere from 5 to 25 schools at once and hundreds of students working on their challenge. So there's lots of different ways to get more value out of it, but we have kind of a freemium offering for companies depending on what they're trying to get out of it and who they're working with.
I see. And then so it's kind of like a relationship with you and the school about putting something together depending on how if it's like 1 week or a semester or something, depending on the school's needs and where they can like kind of plug into your services. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So it really
Yeah.
comes down to like where in the curriculum they're trying to add it. Is
Yeah.
it a full class? Is it part of a class? Is it co-curricular? Meaning, is it part of a club or in between semesters like it was at Notre Dame? They got a week off before their vacation, and
Yeah.
during that week, they got to go and be in the marketplace in real offices with industry leaders. So it
Nice.
really that was just what they wanted out of their experience. Some want it to be a formal 13-week class where they have
Yeah.
to come to class once a week and they're working with their faculty on giving them updates and getting feedback. And then otherwise, they're working with their team and industry partner on presenting and getting feedback and iterating and things along those lines.
Okay, cool, cool. And talking about team, how big is your team at Capsource?
Yeah, so we're about a dozen, and then we scale up, even further depending on what the needs are. So sometimes we get custom feature requests and product requests that we're able to kind of scale up our product team and build some cool features. That's actually where our mentoring tool came from. One of our clients, the SUNY system, came to us and said, "Hey, we really want to see a way for students to develop more professional skills through one-on-one mentoring." And we use like a curricular kind of project-based approach for mentoring. So students like actually have assignments to do, and it's not just like kind of unguided
Yeah.
mentorship, but a little bit more like measurable curricular mentoring. In addition to that, we have a sales and marketing team. So they work regularly on putting together all of our marketing materials, our social, our blog, and setting us up for conferences, presentations, applying for grants and other sorts of things. And then obviously maintaining the relationships with our customers. And then the rest of our team is kind of like what we consider overhead. So it's really our finance team, our
Yeah.
accounting team, our legal team. So we scale them up depending on what we need. But I think
Right,
that's
right, right.
a bit about we're a completely remote virtual team. So we're kind of distributed all over the world.
Nice, nice. And then so depending on the project, like with each school independently, the interaction can be it's totally tailored to each institution, I take it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then like is the interaction with the students primarily desktop based or is it through an app that you have that's just customized each time?
So our core app is actually a like mobile responsive web app. So
Yeah.
it's browser based. Ultimately, the interactions that they have are with the companies that they're working with or with the industry leaders. So if they want to use Google Meet or Zoom or what have you, Slack or Teams, you can actually like kind of really get the students embedded into the environment. It really all depends on the size and scope and personnel that you're working with. So
Yeah.
a lot of that but that's kind of the design of it, right? At the end of the day, there's a million ways to do work, but we're just
Yeah.
trying to expose students to a few more than they would otherwise get if they just went through their normal bachelor's or graduate program.
I see. I see. Okay. And so how has AI affected the a couple things in your business. If you could speak to first around how AI has affected what your service delivery is like for the students, and then also maybe if you could touch on any internal processes that has been affected by AI.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So first and foremost, when you think about product, right?
Yeah.
I think that like it's a race right now to figure out how many ways and how quickly we could bring to market fruitful collaborative ways of using AI that are going to add more value to our end customer because we know that at the end of the day you know other vendors are going to do that too and quicker and better. So
Yeah.
that's
It's a
really
matter of
like
how well is it being done.
yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
like an arms race of AI
Right.
now.
Right. Yeah.
Although, I will say like higher ed is kind of like under a new renaissance. I spoke to an advisor the other day that said, there's like 4 or 5 like, generational changes happening to higher ed at the same time. There's the birth rate decline, there's the bubble of the financial student loan deficit bubble, which
Hmm.
honestly is bubbling over. So these are all pressures actually influencing kind of Gen Z to think maybe there's an alternative to going to a traditional bachelor's program and enrollments are declining. So that's a whole ball of wax. And then you
Yeah.
got
Wow.
COVID and AI
Yeah.
also impacting how higher ed responds to these trends. So it's really like an interesting time to be a vendor. And our whole thing, no matter what, students are going to higher ed to get an opportunity to earn more and achieve
Yeah.
more in their careers. So I think that makes our value proposition bulletproof. AI just adds more treasures to that trove that make it more compelling for our customers. So at the end of the day, we use AI to help scope the projects, to build the mentoring curriculum, to build case studies. There's no need anymore for writers and instructional designers to like clank away at trying to figure out how to frame an industry challenge as a curricular experience. Now AI can do that with the parameters that we've programmed in. Things like building your profile as an organization or individual user, there's ways to use AI that make it instantaneous. So a lot of these things are just
Sure.
alleviating the pressure and stress on users to do that work for them. But at the end of the day, I think it's just, the very top is to take what you already have and make it better with AI. Really, I think what our team hopes to focus on over the next 18 months of product development is how to add more value and use AI while you're doing it. So how can we add collaboration tools for students that's driven with AI, suggesting, hey, this is how you might want to be more efficient as a team, more effective as a team, hit on more value for your organizational partners. So I think those are the types of things that we're starting to think about to add more value beyond what we already have been doing for the last decade with our tool.
Nice. And then internally, what have you guys done to start to or continue to optimize your work within your company?
Yeah, I mean, this is where at the end of the day, like things can be costly, but are so valuable that you're like, wow, how fast and how quick and how effective can I put this type of value into the business?
Yeah.
Sit, we use HubSpot. So how we're using
Yeah.
workflows and using AI to identify missed opportunities, come up with messaging and drip campaigns and how we're actually doing our outreach campaigns, things along the lines of automated chatbots and other types of things that work as like a sales assistant or sales support. So these are all types of things for us that we're starting to think about. I wish we had more time and bandwidth to add more value that way because I think that that's what creates long-term value for the business as opposed to make the product more appealing. Is like if you become more effective at selling the product and the product continues to become more effective, you kind of like, hand in hand are starting to grow your organization, which is I think what is every organization's dream.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And so, what would you say the balance between automating everything in your company with different types of AI? What do you think the balance is between doing those things and the integration of like maintaining the human touch with your customers' interactions?
I think especially with it all, I mean, this kind of thing would depend largely on the customer type and norms. But yeah, in the
Yeah.
higher ed world, getting in front of your customers at conferences is always going to be more valuable than trying to build an AI tool that answers them.
Right.
I think that's probably the case with most industry, especially B2B, because a lot of times, like, I mean, think about how frustrating it is when you're like using a tool and then there's a chatbot and it's that you're talking to an
Right.
AI. That
Oh
AI
yeah.
is, like,
We've all
has
been there.
idea what you're trying to. So like at the end of the day, there's nothing. I mean, there's nothing like human interaction, and it'll be interesting to see how that impacts Gen Z, Gen A as they mature in their college and workforce careers. Because really, it's gonna change. I mean, I think that the level of comfort. I just read this article recently that says like over 70% of adolescents are using chatbots for some form of support, and up to a quarter of them are actually saying that it's like some form of a best friend coach. So like how
Adolescence?
yeah, adolescents,
Really?
young teens and
Yeah.
tweens, yeah. So it's like they're using it in a way that like we used to use human interaction and rely on it
Yeah.
exclusively as our tool. And now it's kind of like the Wild West. Like we're starting to build a whole new level of trust and relationship between humans and technology that I think will actually embed itself into our workforce and workflows in a way that's kind of like unforeseeable right now, but
Yeah.
going to be meaningful.
Yeah, I think it's definitely being embedded. There's a lot of different ways that the agentic AI can help people, like you were talking about there, kind of leaning on it for different types of support, but then also in the business world, people leaning on it for managerial support or customer support or sales support, internal processes just kind of being wrapped in together. I mean, I was out last night with a buddy of mine and he was saying that their he's an IT guy for car dealership, several of them actually. And so he is actually literally figuring out how AI can streamline their business so that their typical number crunching that sucks a lot of hours during a day out of, some of their workers is streamlined and will effectively give those positions other things to work on in their business. Oh, or he said there may be some staffing cuts because the AI that they're integrating is, those agents are actually taking over so much of the work that's just redundant that they're seeing it as a way to trim some costs if they don't kind of repurpose what that staff is allocating their time towards and being more effective than just like typical spreadsheet, number crunchers that's eating up their time. So it's really interesting to see. And it's also interesting to think about how there's talk of, multiple agents working in business over different aspects of the business and then kind of rolling up to one agent boss, and the human oversees that one agent boss who's overseeing all of the other agents. And so it's just fascinating to think about how that workforce may potentially evolve and what that human interaction is going to look like.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's the story about Deloitte having to refund the Australian government for using AI as part of their report, and ultimately it was unverified research that wasn't substantiated, and they're like,
Ugh.
what are we paying you for? We could use ChatGPT too. So,
Wow. Yeah.
and like the reality is like I get it. Why would anybody want to pay a consulting firm for a bunch of young peons to do the work that's ultimately checked by mid-level if their peons can do the work, or their mid-level management can use AI and do the effectiveness of 5 to 10 interns or young professionals that used to be crunching numbers and building reports. There's a whole there's definitely a value. There's two things. One is there's always going to be a value in validating, like, okay,
Yeah.
now you've gotten the ideas synthesized, but now you got to go out and validate that that's right. And maybe you'll find more throughout that process. And then the other is, if everybody stops training young talent, then when it comes time to hiring mid-level talent, everyone's going to be unprepared
Yep.
and underappreciated and potentially even jeopardized from a career standpoint that they weren't able to earn enough to keep themselves afloat and then working jobs that they're underemployed to do. So at the end of the day, I started getting for the first time, we could connect students with companies to do projects. I started getting for the first time, well, kind of, AI could do that. It's like, well, give them a project that AI could do, give them a project that AI could do.
Yeah.
them learn how to use the AI. Don't try to push your team to do it, or give them something 3, 5, 10 priorities down the list that AI could do. Now you have a good amount of research done. And
Yep.
I think it's sad. I remember when I was in school, the big four accounting firms were already talking about shifting from a
Pyramid.
pyramid model
Yeah.
to a diamond model, where it's like more
Yep.
lateral hires and less entry level hires because
Yep.
it's expensive to train them.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
now's
Yeah.
the time where that's being amplified. And the question is that going to actually best serve our economy, our next generation, right? The
Yep.
millennials, they got screwed over, with debt and
Yeah. Yeah.
buy homes and all of the stuff that the American dream was supposed to include, high paying jobs, all that good stuff. So what are we doing with Gen Z? Now we're saying, sorry for trying to convince you to go to school. All of your jobs are going to be taken by AI. So I think that we need to, as a country and as a workforce, continue to think about think about priorities that are further. We're starting to be able to think 10 steps ahead instead of 3, right? So
Hmm.
start thinking 10 steps ahead, give that to the next generation as priorities. And then now you as an organization will be so far ahead than others. And I think that's what's going to continue to perpetuate productivity and alignment with the next generation.
Yeah, I agree. Using AI so that it's able to just efficiently speed things up like that, I think that's one of the big drivers to all of this, and just how it's given the potential to up level so many different people's lives, businesses' lives, business profit, however you want to put it, 100%. Where would you say some challenges are that you've run into, anything, in your like in the school's implementation of something around AI or internally or something, but just where there was like a sudden, oh my gosh, aha moment where it was a challenge, a setback that you guys had, and what you learned from overcoming it?
Schools are generally a little bit more hesitant to do the schools are a little bit more hesitant to do these AI integrations than like other types of organizations. And it kind of reflects pretty similarly to how they operated pre-AI. I know we talked about this in kind of our onboarding call, but I think of the world almost now when we're thinking about like legacy, like projects that we did a year and a half, 2 years ago. It's like, oh, that was pre-AI. And like
Right.
imagine now the
Yeah.
way that we're doing projects is like post-AI. And you're starting to think about, what like you're different of approaching these problems, your process. And so I think schools are still their budgets compared to an enterprise technology is like a quarter to a fifth of what a typical enterprise that same size would be spending on technology.
Yeah.
Well, that
Yeah.
dovetails right into AI, right? It's like
Yeah.
if they're underinvested into tech, they're going to underinvest into AI. And
Yeah.
the problem is that now they're burying themselves further and further below what the expectations are of students and next generation learners. So I've seen some interesting implementations. I have not seen very many. I've seen schools struggle to come up with policies for how to use AI, and where obviously academic integrity, that big topic, that hairy topic of like, you're not supposed to cheat. And it's like, come on, is this really
Right.
cheat? Like I got
Yeah.
a homework assignment for this class that I was doing about board service. It's the first time I did homework since I graduated college. And I
Wow.
was like, holy crap, if I had to do homework these days, I would be in a pickle because I spent my whole life trying to like figure out how to quickly get homework done. And
Yeah.
now I could get it done so quickly that A, are you really learning it? And B, you have to spend half the time restructuring the answer from the AI just to not get in trouble for it.
Yeah.
And it's like
Right.
a really hard thing to ask students to do all the time. It's like you technically have all the answers in your pocket, but we need to make sure that you understand it, and you're spending more time trying to make sure that you're not going to get in trouble than you are actually learning the material. And so that's why,
That's the
again,
key.
I'm a big advocate for experiential learning, because at the end of
Yeah.
the day, if you
Yeah.
could solve a real business problem that has real stakeholders and real stakes, that makes you valuable. And I don't
Yeah.
care.
100%.
None of them care if you use AI at the end of
Right.
the day. They all want you to use whatever tools you need to get me the best answer the quickest as possible.
Yeah, and the best there is key, right? It's like not just doing the job, but doing it well. And so how can you take AI to manipulate out to the best degree and then make it that human, interface of whatever it is so that the project gets delivered that's really the best. That's
Yeah.
totally valuable. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The hope is that the schools, I mean, the old philosophy of academic institutions, like back when they started in the 15, 16, 1700s, was that they were the keepers of knowledge and
Right.
that their researchers were trying to pass along information to the
Right.
next generation
Hand it
because
down. Yeah.
they were the ones who had all that knowledge. And then
Right.
obviously the internet shattered that construct, right?
Yeah.
And then it became how many people can we throw through the education system and and really increase its capacity so that it can reach many, 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 many more people. The only thing that we never thought about is like, is that actually going to serve humanity and the individuals? And I think we kind of hit a tipping point recently. And I think COVID kind of like really kind of pushed things over the edge where now there's a real deep introspective discussion happening with students about whether or not that's the best way to educate themselves. Because the truth of the matter
Yeah.
is, if you gave me 4 years and I could probably learn more than I learned in my 4 year degree. Now, is it going to have the same interpersonal skills development? Absolutely not. Is
Right.
it going
That's
to
the
have
thing.
the
Yeah.
same ability to apply it? Honestly, it depends on how you build your own personal curriculum with AI. But there's a lot to debate and think about. And I would encourage schools at the end of the day to think about how do you build a fortified, future-proof educational institution and
Right.
education system. And for me, it would be every single class is industry integrated. So you learn about entrepreneurship, you're learning with entrepreneurs. You're learning about marketing, you're learning with marketing leaders. You're learning about analytics, you're dealing with real data, real organizations. You're learning about mechanical engineering, you're dealing with real products, real mechanical problems, electrical problems, things along the lines of that are expected of professional engineers. It's almost trade school, but it's like so much more iterative, right? It's
Yeah.
not like,
Yeah.
okay, we're doing an apprenticeship for a year. It's every few weeks I'm getting another experience to add to my resume. I want
Right.
students to graduate with 10 things on their resume, not one, and not not odd jobs and service jobs that help them get through school. It should be,
Right.
I developed this for this person. You call him and ask him what I did, and he'll.
Right.
And unfortunately, I don't
Deep,
understand why.
tangible results.
Yeah, I don't understand why it's so complicated for schools to come into terms with the fact that that's really not that complicated to coordinate. Like it's really not. You just have to have a good network and you have students that are prepared and coached regularly on how to deliver, and otherwise they're ready to graduate. They probably don't even need to be there for 4 years if you're going to do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what's the prevalence of these colleges and universities questioning like their own existence? Like how much are they thinking that this is a real potential existential threat to them versus in say just business in general? There's a lot of question of like, oh, are these jobs going away? This sector is going away. This sector is going away. Like what's your interaction with the schools and universities been like thinking that like this is a real existential threat?
You know, unfortunately, the way that most make decisions is it's not like something that they're really thinking about. They're kind
Hmm.
of like survival mode and sometimes like, excited enough to get into reinvention mode and then they kind of get in their own way. It's like the downside of a flat organization is that you just kind of like, you kind of
Go
topple over
along.
as
Yeah.
opposed to like, I think an amazing institution, right down the road from us is Arizona State. I mean, they from
Yeah. Why is that?
early 2000s, they were like, okay, people are going to want online micro credentials, small credits to finish this and that.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
they have a residential experience, 40,000. They have over 200,000 students. It's the same type of school as any other school.
Hmm.
And then what's funny is like then U of A hops on to the same thing about 5 years ago, and they're nowhere near going to be able to catch up on that. And then the whole thing is like,
Hmm.
to be honest, that's not even, that's not the future anymore. That's the present. So what's
Yeah. Right.
happening?
Yeah.
How do you get on board with the next phase of education? And I've always been a proponent of like, if it's not workforce aligned, then it's not education, higher ed anymore. And, there are educators out there that will debate you to their death that education should not be about workforce. It should be about liberal arts and expanding thinking. And it's like,
Uh,
I think that that's true. I do. I think that there's parts of curriculum that should be about developing the whole student and not just prepping them for solving
right.
workforce problems.
Yeah. Yeah. How to think.
Yeah, if they can't connect the concepts that they're learning to real world problem solving, then it doesn't matter what they know. you
Right.
know? So
Yeah.
I think that what I hope for the future is that it's 50% career and professional education aligned with their career interests, which by the way, they should have a right to evolve. Like, why are you choosing a major as sophomore year if you've never taken any major class?
Right. Yeah.
The
Yeah. Yeah.
silliest thing I've ever heard. Like,
Yeah.
okay, you took one accounting class, one finance class, one marketing class, one management
And
class,
you're supposed to know.
and now you have to choose your major. And by the
Right.
way, if you want to change later, you might have to pay another $50,000 and go for one more year. That's
Exactly. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
not how these next generation of students are going to want to operate. So
Yeah. They're going to
flexibility,
demand so much more.
personalized learning, app around services, and then I think like professional focus with wrap around like whole student skill and identity, personal identity development. It's
I
like
see. Yeah.
I think AI is like basically your companion for all of it, right? Like how often, I mean, now these days we're pulling out in the middle of lunch like our phones to fact check each other and
Yeah. I know. Right.
conversation like, oh, what, you want to talk about the Roman Empire? I could pull up facts like that. Like it's no more like you don't need
Yeah.
the knowledge. You just need the ability to process it and and communicate it and understand it contextually, right? Like the Roman Empire is contextually relevant at a certain time in a certain place, and it perpetuated history in a certain way. But other than that, you could pull up this information, at the drop of a hat. It's
Yeah.
kind of like it's like the calculator being introduced to the education system 70s, 80s, 90s. It slowly became like, oh, this calculator, you're never gonna have a calculator in your pocket. And then it was like, well, you got a calculator in your pocket.
Right.
Well,
And you're
now
wearing
we
it
have
on
in
your
our
watch.
pocket.
Yeah. 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 100%. Yeah. And so, like, that's definitely a trend, right? I mean, we have our computers in our hands now, and we're able to call up so much information because of the AI. What trends, either in higher ed or in business in general, do you see is coming down the pipe, in the very near future, thanks to AI? Say, like, within the next year, either trends that you've been seeing right now starting to develop, or if you could pontificate on maybe a trend that you think might emerge.
There's the example of the country in Europe
Okay.
that has an AI based like civic leader. I don't know if you are familiar with that, but there's an
No.
AI minister in Albania. And so, you think about this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Like, first of all, it's great marketing for Albania, right? We're talking about Albania, and I probably would never have brought up Albania on a podcast before. So that's what one of my friends said is like, oh, it's all marketing. But if you really think about it, like AI management, right? AI as managers, like we work
Yeah.
for the company, for the boss, but there's a layer in between us, right? That is AI managing, organizing, approving, disapproving, disciplining, performance improving mechanism implementation. There are so many ways that if AI is really like lingering around I mean, think about a work computer, right? At the end of the day, it's constantly running processes that are like owned by the company, usually
Hmm.
for security and protection. But if it's AI, you can know how productive people are,
Oh,
what
yeah.
they're working on, whether it's taking them longer than their peers to complete tasks. I mean, it's a complete invasion of privacy, and that's why I'm grateful to be
It certainly
working on
can
my
be.
not part of a beastly large organization that's all about the numbers and
Yeah, yeah.
oriented. Like at the end of the day, that's like why I do this. But yeah, I think that's probably the big thing that's going to happen next is that we're gonna have to report to AI, and
Yeah.
AI is going to be the one. They're going to be the ones choking the throats and not. I think senior level management is not going to get involved unless something seems off. And it's like at the end of the day, they're not going to curse you out or come into the discipline environment with emotion. They're going to be like, you're paid this much money. You're expected to produce this outcome. You're producing this, which we could tell because we have all these measurable statistics. So it's like I think the big interesting thing about the last 20 years is that data, the creation of a superfluous amount of data is what ultimately created AI, right? We had so much data that AI was able to be created. Now it's like we're creating data for AI to make decisions about us. Not
Mm,
no longer we're using AI to make decisions, but AI is going to start making decisions about us based on the data that we're creating. And I
mm.
think that kind of takes away a little bit of the freedom and autonomy and kind of like The old kind of like sit in the office and have a coffee chat. I think that you're gonna be noticed for that more than you
Yeah.
ever were before. And culture creators matter, but at the end of the day, is it measurable to an AI? Hopefully,
Yeah.
or else
Yeah.
your job might be on the line.
Right. Exactly. It's just, it's the conveyor belt going by and it's pushing you off because you haven't given enough product output yet. What about any trends that you may have seen in the education space and in regards to the collaboration where you're putting students in the experiential learning situations with companies? Have you seen any demand for, say, the students that are in data science and those sort of majors being requested to fall into more of the AI development roles or something that's, say, tangible in the AI space specifically?
Yeah. So there's an amazing organization called Holland IQ. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's like a
No.
big research and innovation entity that's kind of like trying to predict the future of higher ed and then ultimately kind of tail in, leadership development and product development that ties to it. So they basically have
Holland IQ? Holland IQ?
HOLON IQ.
Okay, got it.
So basically they created like a map that basically explained the likely outcome of what is the likely future of higher ed. I thought it
Yeah.
was really interesting, right? Because at the end of
Yeah.
the it's like they're trying to predict, like, based on what's happening, and honestly, the first time that I ever saw this, it was really not it was way pre-AI. It was really not,
Oh,
something that
okay.
existed before AI, but one of the big categories was personalized learning. Like, at the end of the day, you're actually, thinking about personalized learning as like a future, because like right
Yeah.
now education in its ability to scale from like the 1960s 70s to the 2000s, it was all about trying to mass produce education, and mass
Yeah, yeah.
production meant reducing the personalized nature of learning. And like really back in the day, like higher education was almost entirely personalized. It was, hey, you found this researcher that you wanted to learn from, so you used to study with him and attend class and help him in his research. And like it was a very cool like future prediction of education. So
Yeah.
that I think that was like a big kind of like future. They called it
Mhm.
robo revolution. Then there's all these other predictions. Another one is like peer to peer. So like that whole like the growth of peer to peer learning and like how you learn from other people is going to grow, and then AI tools would be integrated around that. The rise of global giants. So like ultimately education would consolidate, and then there would be a few entities that kind of govern education, which would change kind of the nature of education in a way that like if everyone's being educated in a similar way, then you have a very interesting future. Regional rising, where that just happens on regional levels, and then education as usual. Like it's just like they're going to constantly make changes, and then there's no real trends. So
Sure.
I thought that was really interesting to see how they predicted like these are the types of things. And at the end of the day, I think AI is the biggest influence in how personalized learning, and like that's really like the schools have to embrace these tools. They have to embrace how these tools impact students. They have to position themselves to support students as these tools take over the lives around them. Because even something like, they used to say, accounting was an extremely hardened skill and, future proof. And then almost like five years, it became like, well, you could basically do what accountants and internal finance teams do with AI and a couple of
Mhm.
people. So you don't
Yeah.
need as big of a team anymore.
Right.
And so then it was like, well, coding, right? Because all these machines are going to need coding. Well, now AI can code.
Yeah.
So it's kind of really hard, and individual advice to students is really hard, and helping them figure out what they want to do, because at the end of the day it's like if you train yourself in a skill set and that skill set now becomes no longer because AI takes it over, how prepared are you to pivot, right? Because
Right.
if you're so deep and they're like I am a Ruby on Rails expert, I can code anything on Ruby on Rails, and then 5 years later Rails is gone,
Yeah.
how ready are you to pivot? So I think
Yeah.
ultimately teaching students how to be dynamic in their thinking and strategic and capable beyond just you have to be multidimensional. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
it's kind of like the future degree. It's like you're basically you're building and sharpening a Swiss Army knife rather than a single blade intended for a single purpose.
Right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that universality of what AI can do, and then the human interaction with like knowing what blade or tool of it like to pull out and put into use. And then therefore, because you've picked that one and you've instituted, then you're actually affecting change in the real world by the work that you did in creating whatever sort of product or output, right? Like it's so fascinating. It's like we're all given like instantly right now so much thanks to AI, like all of these Swiss Army knives in our pockets to be able to do, sky's the limit with. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, well, first of all, my biggest advice for everyone, regardless of your age, is the best way to learn is to teach. It's like
Yeah.
like
Yep.
that famous saying from med school. It's like see one, do one, teach one. It's like that's how you become an expert, and that's a system that I think will forever be the case. So if you're not mentoring anyone, then you're likely losing touch with the next generation of what's to come. And that's, by the way, like embedded into our product strategy. Is
It's embedded to being human, right?
I would say that it's natural. It's not something that happens without intention, right?
Yeah, and I think we've probably like become detached from it from a culture standpoint. I think that people like used to be more in touch with the multi-generational and the whole like learning from your kids things kind of a bit more than these days. We tend to be a bit more segregated, but yeah, there's so much value around that. 100%.
Well, so that's in essence what we're trying to convince. So it's a very famous study that showed from 1950 to 2000,
Okay.
like over 90% of the Fortune 500 companies turned over.
Huh.
So literally the powerhouse organizations of the 50s didn't exist in 2000. And so like always say like the ones that can and do survive are doing so because they're investing into the next generation. It makes the next generation inherently aware of what they are capable of, who they are as a product and as an employer brand. And then it kind of future proofs you because you're embedded into their thinking and doing and being, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So like in theory, Apple's like coming up on that, that horizon, right? Like it's going to be basically one of the exceptions. I think they're well endowed to figure it out. But their next 50 years is not going to be as easy as their first 50 years.
Right. 100%.
Talk
Yeah.
about like,
They've got to re-innovate.
talk about Siri as an
I
example.
know Siri's pathetic. Like, hello, catch up with the times.
Yeah, they're real. I mean, that's a huge missed opportunity for them. And
Yeah.
honestly, I mean, look, what's interesting thing about Meta is that they're like deeply investing into AI and they're trying to like poach all the AI leaders from all these different organizations. And at the end of the day, their organizational culture is not an AI driven culture.
Right.
So they have to. I mean, if Zuckerberg can do it and reinvent himself, I mean, at the end of the day, he's sitting on the largest trove of social data and the
Oh
constant
God. Yeah.
different apps that they own. It makes them extremely likely to survive. Again, they're nowhere near their 50-year mark. Right? They started in 2000, so they're
Yeah.
about halfway through, and they're a powerhouse. So it's interesting to think about. I always say, if you cannot find anything for the next generation to do, you are going to be detached from reality soon enough and out of business. Like it
Yeah.
might be 10 years, and that might not be a time horizon that you care about. But
Right.
if you care, if you continuously do not reinvest into the next generation, you'll be gone because
You're closing the door on yourself.
you're missing opportunities to learn about new tools, new ways of thinking.
Yeah.
Literally the best example of this is, in the scientific community, they basically figured out like there's a 13-year-old girl who figured out how to take a picture of a black hole because she convinced the scientific community to take all the telescopes that on Earth and use the Earth as aperture and basically take a picture of where we thought there was a black hole at the same time and then basically put all of those images together. That was a 13-year-old girl.
Isn't
Right?
that amazing?
All of the scientific community, no one ever thought to do that. She thought to do that. So if they're thinking in such a different way,
Such a
because
different way. Yeah.
we empower them with our tools and with the legacy of our decisions and creations, to create new. And so
Yeah.
they're operating boundless with no regard for the limitations of reality. And then eventually certain things just like come to fruition. And I think like if you don't invest into that next generation, you'll be gone before they get to the workplace.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Well, Jordan, this is great work that you do. I'm so glad that you're literally invested in the younger generation. It seems like you've got a lot of company longevity right there, kind of just inherent in your great services. This has been a total pleasure. What's a great way for people to be able to reach out to you and find you guys online?
I'm very active on LinkedIn, so reach out,
Okay.
connect. Jordan Levy, would love to chat. I answer all my own personal like LinkedIn, so feel free to.
There's no AI in there.
No, they're very prohibitive on using AI inside
LinkedIn
LinkedIn.
is tight. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
they're probably the tightest platform for that, which is a good thing. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. At the end, so it's actually there's a whole thing now called the dead internet, and it's like basically how much of your internet experience is actually interacting with things that are not alive, right? Because like it used to be all the
Interesting. Okay.
content that was created by humans for humans. All the things that were written were created by humans for humans. And the reality is like that's not the
Right.
case, and it's going to dwindle as faster than ever because our creation. So yes, an easy way to get in touch with me is
This
LinkedIn.
is LinkedIn. Okay.
And obviously our website, you can find a way to book time directly with me and chat if you're interested in figuring out ways to.
Right on your website on Capsource.
Yeah, capsource.io. We're a huge fan of trying to find new applications for what we're doing. So if you want to, like, we're talking to charter schools about doing case competitions for their high school students, and like they get to choose, like, do you want to work on the marketing one or the analytics one or the product development one? And I think those are the types of things that they need to be starting to think about. I actually read an article the other day that said middle school is the new frontier for exposing kids to career education and
Really?
starting to think about what types of employment future that they want. So if you're starting to think about this as a middle school student, let's give them a chance to actually get their hands dirty, especially with case
Yeah.
studies. The stakes are so low, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, how would you integrate AI into a product like ours, right? It's so simple, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to know me. You don't have to talk to me to learn anything. You just poke around, learn what you can, come up with an idea, and that helps you really synthesize like what is a business model? What's this industry? What makes this product unique? And then, ultimately it forces you to use AI in a way that's going to actually add value to the
Right.
project. Then therefore you start building those technical skills to
Yeah.
actually value in the long term. So
Yeah.
needless to say, really appreciate your time, Mark. This has been fun. I love
Indeed.
about, the future, and, I think the future is bright. I really do. I think that the more energy that we continue to pour into humanity and connecting each other using these tools, the better. And so that's really what we're all about is we're a community. And so I think at the
Indeed.
end of the day, when you shut your laptop, don't forget how important it is to, build the relationships with your loved ones and then build new relationships with new loved ones and keep them,
Yes.
because at the end of the day, they're the ones that you need to call when you need support. And
That's
so
right.
you're not going to be able to really call AI when you need someone to hold your baby so that you can
Right.
other child, to the pediatrician's office. Like you need to have
Yeah.
those relationships. So don't forget
Exactly.
about those. And then otherwise use these tools for good and not evil, baby.
I love it. A wonderful reminder. Appreciate it so much. Jordan, thank you very much. Stick around here for a minute. But again, thank you for your time. And we'll point everyone to your LinkedIn and to Capsource.
Thanks, Mark. Take care, everyone.
All right. Take care.